Just like a prayer, you are a muse to me.
It's time for some fun. Fun with He-Man!
In this episode, I'm going to go over the background inspirations, the philosophy, theology, religion, and pop cultural references that all went together to create Shera, Princess of Power. So after the success of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the cartoon and the toy line, Mattel really amped it up by increasing the budget for the toy production and also the new cartoon that was going to be Shera versus the He-Man cartoon. So the first thing that they did was create all new villains. And just like I love the Shera story and the Shera toys, I love the villains for Shera, the evil horde. They were my favorite. And the budget was through the roof from Mattel to make these really, really awesome toys. So when they first created the evil horde, they were technically part of Masters of the Universe, and they were just part of the He-Man universe. And the only sort of story beat we got was that Skeletor had once been part of the evil horde. Now, the design of the evil horde was universal monsters. So you have your Hordak that's very sort of Dracula looking, and his henchman was Grizzlor that looks very much like a Wolfman. I put some bat wings on him from 2000X just to make him extra spooky and scary. We had Leech that was very much creature from the Black Lagoon, and we had Mantenna that was like alien from another planet, and he had fun pop-out eyes. So they all had like amazing play features, pop-out eyes, suction cup, feet and hands, and suction noises, furry bodies, very awesome stuff. Modulok was the most awesome of all. And he was sort of like a Frankenstein monster. He was literally like a Lego. He was just made up of different body parts, and you could pull him apart and make all kinds of different versions. Any monstrous body that you wanted to create, you could make with Modulok. I loved him. These are all the new Origins versions of them, but I did have them all from the 80s because they were my favorite. They were my absolute favorite. And so when Filmation started to use them as the villains in Shera, I loved it. It was everything I ever wanted all together. Now, the narrative that they assigned to the evil horde wasn't quite universal monsters. In fact, they assigned them more of like a Lovecraftian cosmic horror because they were part of a larger force, the Horde, led by Horde Prime, that came from outer space, and they had soldiers and Horde troopers with them to take over worlds, and they had like a whole empire that they ended up seizing. And one of their most favorite places was Etheria, where they landed to take over Etheria. And even though they took over Etheria, they kind of stalled at Etheria because of Shera and the Princess of Powers and the Great Rebellion. So they were kind of slowing down the expansion of the Horde Empire. Very interesting that there was sort of these like social political subtext to a fun 80s cartoon show. Now, some of the inspiration that went into Shera herself was, first of all, she's like a Valkyrie. So a Valkyrie is basically a Norse angel. So the Valkyrie were beautiful female warriors that flew on winged steeds, and they would escort fallen Viking soldiers to Valhalla, which was like their heaven. So she essentially is a Nordic angel guardian of souls, and I love it. Now, also, inspiration that went into Shera that's more modern and not quite steeped in ancient religious philosophy is her beautiful, bold, rainbow, colorful designs, very Lisa Frank. And Lisa Frank was a popular designer that made notebooks and trapper keepers and binders and just fun school supplies for kids that had all sorts of like unicorns and rainbows. Very, very gay, but very gay before gay was gay. And I loved that too. Now, in addition to all the members of the evil horde that were both sort of universal monster inspired and also Lovecraftian cosmic horror inspired, one of their core members was Shadow Weaver. And Shadow Weaver kind of was like the witch ghost, sort of a ghosty sort of witch type. And she was not ever released originally in a toy. This is a newer Origins version. She was a huge player in the cartoon, and we just had to wait until our adulthood to get an actual toy of her. Now, the Shadow Weaver character now brings to the table sort of the more dark and disturbing aspects of the She-Ra story. So first of all, the disturbing narrative that She-Ra was abducted. So we're dealing with child abduction as right away a plot point to the story. Very dark stuff. And not only was she abducted and was her family sort of traumatized by her abduction, but she was raised to be a soldier. So we are dealing with real global issues here in this cartoon of children that are taken from their homes and then raised in tyrannical regimes to become a militia. Very heavy stuff. So first of all, you have the trauma of the parents. So the king and queen were traumatized by her abduction. And I know when I was sitting there in the theater to watch the live action movie from Travis Knight, in that post-credit scene, when we saw Marlena and Duncan talking, I just knew right away what was going to happen. And sure enough, they talked about not giving up hope. And I just about lost my goddamn mind, and so did everyone else in the theater, because sure enough, it was the big reveal that we had She-Ra. But not only were we excited to see She-Ra and all of her glory, beauty, and camp, but also like the themes that come with She-Ra are so amazing. And that's what speaks to, I think, fans for all these years, is that she is the theme of hope. And she is the theme of being strong in the face of adversity. And I hope we get more of it. I hope we get, if not a movie, a series, something, definitely more toys, but we need it. We need more uplifting and hopeful stories. So back to some disturbing elements. So another really disturbing part about Shadow Weaver is that she was essentially She-Ra's mom. Like, she raised her, and so there's like Stockholm syndrome going on there because they kind of loved each other. And then ultimately She-Ra had to run away from home and had to escape this relationship, this sort of captive relationship that was, I guess, at times nurturing and loving, but it's at its base abusive and horrible, because she was a stolen child being raised to serve in a militia. I mean, it really doesn't get any darker than that. Perhaps one additional detail to Shadow Weaver that makes her even more disturbing is that underneath her hood, she was disfigured. Now, that was like definitely a trope that was very popular in the 80s. A lot of action, like especially the barbarian type movies, Conan and Beastmaster, they often had like a succubus type character. And a succubus, again, going back to ancient mythology and religious belief systems, a succubus was like a beautiful woman that was also a demon. So there was a juxtapositioning between like her sexuality and her sexiness, and then also monstrousness because she was a demon. And succubi would seduce men and kill them, or drain their life force out of them. So all kinds of like ancient sexual repressed issues get manifested in sort of like the succubi legends. And so Conan fought a succubus after having sex with her. There were some succubi in Beastmaster, all these like early 80s sword and sorcery movies that obviously were inspiration to He-Man, and then went on to become an inspiration for She-Ra, where you really had Shadow Weaver as like a sort of a horrible succubus that also was She-Ra's adopted, kidnapped mother. And so speaking of inspiration from Conan, Valeria was the female character love interest in Conan, not the succubus he had sex with, but the love interest that he went on an adventure with. And she gets killed in battle in the movie. If you've never seen the original Conan with Arnold, I highly recommend. And then after she dies, her spirit comes back as like a even more powerful entity. And what she looked like, her outfit, her winged helmet, her outfit was very much a Valkyrie and very much inspiration for then Shera with her winged helmet. So Shera and the Evil Horde was a combination of all kinds of interesting ancient religious storytelling, modern pop culture, Hollywood glamour, all mixed together. And I think that's why she really resonates with people. People love her. She's still making an impact on pop culture. I know Kylie Minogue has done many takes on Shera, a comedic sketch where she dressed up like her, and she had a whole tour where she was kind of dressed up in different Shera outfits. So good for you, Shera, and good for you, Kylie. Well, thank you for joining me as I started to look underneath the hood of Shera and to see what inspirations there were to help give us this beautiful icon of power.